Alrighty, so we have some data from SurveyMonkey that we have exported, and we want to import it into BigQuery so we can do some analysis of the different people who have completed the survey and different traits that are grouped together. Now, you can see here that we have some basic metadata about the different people, which is quite good. Then there's some demographic information and some ages and so forth. But the thing I wanted to draw your attention to specifically for this video was this process of being able to transform these data that are, if you see here, we've got like a question here, and then we've got all the possible answers below. And this is repeated so that you'll see for each row, which is a response, we have the cell which has the correct answer mimics the possible answer. So you can see what is your gender. We have male, female, other, prefer not to say. So there's 4 options the user had to choose from. If they were male, they would have chosen here, and female, they would have chosen here, other, they would have chosen here. So to make this work and to make this reasonable, there's definitely a way you can do this within software, within scripting it out. I wanted to show how to do it in Google Sheets, specifically because I think a lot of people will not want to go through the process of actually writing the program to do this when it takes like 20 minutes to just do this in Google Sheets. And using Google Apps Script, I'm pretty sure you could probably go through and make this even faster. So I'm going to show you the approach that I've taken. You can see there is a lot of questions here. So it is quite a tedious process, but it is relatively simple once you get up and running. So I've created a tab down here. Oh, let me just... There we go, get the right tab. And what I've done is, I'm just going to show you, I've already kind of started this, but okay, so let's go here. What are the, okay, so I'm ready to do a new one. Now I do have row number 1, I have some conditional formatting, which basically just tells me when the blank rows are. And that's only because the way that Google Sheets as well as Excel does this means that these words kind of flow over. You can actually turn on Word, I don't know, one of the options, and it will stop doing that so you can see where there's empty gaps, but I find color just to be super easy to follow. So this is the way we're doing it. Now I know that that is the question, and then here are the answers down below. This is what we're going to work with, this particular block of columns. So I'm going to add a new column to the left, and you can see this is now green because it's an empty cell, just that's conditional formatting. I'm going to copy that question across, and that will undo itself eventually. Google Chrome does actually handle this kind of poorly because it's you'll see what I'm doing, and when it runs a bunch of queries it is a bit slow to respond. You'll see in a sec. So I have this formula here that I'm copying and pasting kind of as I go across, and I'll explain it in a moment. So I am going to copy that and pop it there. And what this formula does, first of all, we wrap it in this IFERROR function. And the IFERROR function takes basically something you're calculating or an operation you're doing. And then as a second argument, this value with error, you can actually put in something else if there was an error in the first one. And that stops you getting the like hash NA or hash value or basically an error code in your cell, because that is pretty ugly to work with. The cool thing about this function is if you just leave it, so you don't put anything there, it will, if it's an error, it will just leave the cell blank, which is exactly what we want. So if we are specifically looking at, this is the question, and then someone doesn't answer at all, so if our SurveyMonkey had the option for someone not to answer, the way this function works is that it would actually, or the query transpose, which we'll go to in a sec, it would throw an error because it couldn't find any cell that matched that query. So wrapping it in if error means that we just end up with a beautiful blank box as opposed to an error that would then have to go and format out later. So what this looks like, now we're into query. So this is why you need to do it with Google Sheets and not with Excel. Excel doesn't have this feature. It may have something similar. So if you know a secret Excel trick, that's pretty cool. So query lets you write a SQL query over or SQL-ish query over a set of data within Google Sheets. There's whole sections on how this works on the Google Sheets help, but specifically I just wanted to point out two things that we're doing here. So first of all, this transpose function takes an array of options. So in this case, we're taking those cells, and transpose will actually bring it back down the other way. So it turns a bunch of columns into a bunch of rows, and it kind of does that on the fly. It doesn't actually print it out. It just kind of does it in memory so that you can work with it as if it was one big column. And that's kind of what you need to do when you're going to run this function. So we want to query over a single row with all the possible options. And the query says select column 1. So select this one column, because we only have one column, where the value, for the first value, that is not null, i.e. it's not blank. And then we say limit of 1. So this could easily be translated to take this. You can see it's going to block it, isn't it? If I, yeah, so this is in the way. But basically take this here, take this sort of row and convert that into a column, and then go down the column and then find me the first row that's not blank, and then just return 1, which is at limit 1. And what that does is, well, exactly what it says. So if I look at here, now you can see this, it's actually not capturing all the results, and that's because I copied it from here. So when I go through each of these, I need to actually just copy that across and then kind of extend it. So what I can do here, I don't know if I can do this visually. Yeah, I just type it in. So it is CZ. And here we've now got all the options. And then from all of the options, we're going to create that as one column. We're going to find the first one that's not blank and then return it. So you can see here we've got more reward seats. Now this is a good example here where this IFERROR function is doing its job, because this person did not provide any answer at all. So let me just copy that one more down. And you can see here it's got this one. It's brought this in. Let's see what they answered. Ability transfer. Yep. Now see, this is an interesting case because they've actually chosen multiple options. So I haven't actually dealt with this case specifically in this spreadsheet, and I'm going to have to go back and check. So there are some questions where people have been able to choose multiple options, and in that case, what we'll probably do is do a a comma delimited, set. So we're going to go through, and instead of finding the first one, we're actually going to group them all together and join by a comma. Now that's a little harder to work with because we are going to put this into BigQuery. We kind of want to convert that into an array. So I'm going to go through and do all this, and I'm going to come back and kind of figure out what the best data structure is for here, so that we can actually import this back into BigQuery and then work with it with all the native BigQuery functions. It is possible in BigQuery to take just a regular string and comma separated, and to search for that, find if that's, and turn that into an array, and then kind of query upon that. It's a slightly more complex SQL query, which I kind of want to avoid if I can, because it makes it easier to do it at the data source as opposed to later. But I'll figure that one out after. So the way this process works, I'm just going to show you as I go through this. I grab that and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, paste that formula down, and that will be going through and then bringing back the first response all the way across the whole data set. And I just repeat this over and over again. So now that I know I've done that, I'm just going to go hide, then move on to the next one. So this is a yes/no question. So let me just go through and do this, left. And I know that I've got a yes/no that I did here. So just to be a little sneaky, I am going to copy that there. And then this will already be looking to across DB and DC. Yeah, that's right. Now you can see here that it is actually a little bit slow, and this comes down to these queries are running across multiple times, full rows, all the way down. It can be slow. So you can see this is already updated. So that's the question. That was the original question. These were the answers. Now, I think if, because a lot of the cells are running into each other here, I wouldn't try and make everything full width because the questions are too long and you're going to lose all your screen real estate, and you don't want it to wrap because it's going to be really hard to kind of see what's going on. It's kind of easier to have all your rows uniform. So what I would typically do in this case is more of what I've done here is use coloring to actually make that work. So yeah, I'm going to just show you what that looks like anyway. I'm sure you know how to do this, but I'm going to make it this color if it's not empty. So you can see here, this is actually showing me where the results are. So when I'm going through, it just makes it easier to know where to start and finish. It's more of a visual thing. This is kind of just one of those processes. So I'm going to copy this down to start with, and I'm going to show you that error function. Now, we know that this one here, we've already hidden the results. So let me just bring that back. How do you unhide? Oops, that double clicked. I want to unhide. There we go. So this is the original block of questions here, and this is the new one that I made that's kind of looking that up. You can see what I'm doing here is I'm just copying the question name across. What I'm going to do is show you what happens if we don't have the if error. So you get this NA. So if I had this like that, you're going to have these NAs all the way through, and they're just annoying to deal with. So yeah, definitely adding if error is a nice complement to this. So my plan is to continue through this all the way across. If you literally have hundreds of questions, this is probably too tedious. There might be ways you can probably script this a bit better. Definitely, if I was ingesting this as a script into like a node program or something, I could script out the whole thing. Although there's so many potential differences in the data set that I feel I'm going to spend more time dealing with understanding the shape of the data than I will with just getting the job done. And this is one of those cases where I think there's only about 20 or 25 questions here. Like put a half an hour in. I've got a process, go through, churn it out, and it's done. I can get on to the analysis, which is where all the value is, not cleaning it up, because of this weird sort of like titled and sub-nested structure. So the way I'm doing this is go through, repeat that, then hide the columns that are the ones I don't need. Repeat that, create a new column, go that over and over and over again. And then when it's done, I'm going to copy this, copy the kind of final output with all the hidden columns, and then paste that back into another sheet that I'll be cleaning up and deleting all the columns I don't need. And the main reason I'm doing that is because I still want to retain this original one, just in case I've done something like, where I haven't included all the columns. So this might have had to extend to somewhere further and I'm missing a question. So what I'll do at the very end is I'm going to look for the range of possible values and where there's like a value that no one ever answered, and just make sure that I didn't miss that value. So there's a bunch of checks I can do at the end to just make sure it works, but the basic principle is the same. And also I did mention that because I'm not dealing with multiple choice, as in multiple options, sort of like a select rather than options field, then I'm going to have to go through and just thinking through this. I probably would do, actually, let's see if I can do this live. So if I know someone so this one, they've got that option and that option. So I think if I look at here, if I just make that limit 5, okay, so it's gonna give me a reference error because it's expanding and we can't expand over and overwrite the data. But what I could do, let's have a look. I think, see, normally in SQL, I would be able to wrap that up and then like as a subquery and then just select and join it. I don't know what join functionality I have here, but it would be something like a join operator where it's like that. So it's basically select all values. I don't think that works here. No, because join's going to be a SQL keyword. It might be like a concat. I'm not sure. I have to look up the actual query reference for the Google Sheets query language. But ultimately, it's going to be something like that. We're going to do an aggregation where when we have multiple results, which effectively is, remember, going to be multiple columns. Multiple rows in this one column of answers, and we're going to take away this limit of 1 because we want more than 1, and then we're going to add them together. So I'll figure that out, and if I want to make a video on that, I will. But this is at least shows you the underlying sort of principle of doing a query, transposing it, and then selecting one. So hope this has been helpful.